We are live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library. We're joined by actor, singer, best-selling author David Duchovny. His latest novel is Miss Subways, a reimagining of an Irish myth set in modern-day New York City. And yes, the subway system is central to the story. It's getting great reviews. Some critics are characterizing it as a postmodern fairy tale, but mystical might be a more apt adjective, because how can anything be postmodern now that the former host of Celebrity Apprentice is president of the U.S.? David Duchovny will be at a book signing event this afternoon at 4 o'clock at the Harvard Bookstore. To get tickets, you go to harvard.com. David, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thanks for being here.
Nice to meet you, too. I guess the dumbest period naming would be modern, because then you go postmodern after that?
That's a very fun point.
That is an excellent point.
The only worst name of a period was contemporary, because how can you be post-contemporary?
That's another very
You'd have to go to future.
Yeah.
Got you.
There was contemporary fiction about 20 years ago.
Yes.
Now that's postmodern.
I got it. Okay. Could you repeat any of that?
He went to Princeton and Yale.
I know. I read.
So
I
like to think I'm starting the pre-post-contemporary.
I think you're the man for it.
Let me tell you what you are doing, and we'll get to this in a second. You've allowed my co-host here, Mr. Browdy, to relive vicariously his years on the New York City subway, which we'll get to
totally true.
in a second.
I don't know why you'd want to do that.
Well,
I'll tell you why you'd want to do it, actually.
We'll get to that in a second. But just tell people, what's the basic premise of Miss Subways?
Well, I guess the idea that stayed with me was when I was a graduate student, I saw a W.B. Yeats verse play called The Only Jealousy of Emer. Which stars Cuchulainn, the mythical Irish king, and his wife, the Queen Emer. And an Irish demon, a Cid, S-I-D-H-E, comes to Emer and offers her this wager and says, your husband, the king, Cuchulainn, is about to die in battle, but you can save him. She says, how? And he says, you have to renounce your love for him. When he wakes up from this dream of almost dying, he will not know you. He will not know that you have children together. He will never know you, and you will never know him. And that always struck me as a very romantic notion. Not so romantic, but like a darkly romantic. And I modernize it into a contemporary time, the present day, and just try to tell that fairy tale or that myth within the context of New York and the subway system.
I was just going to say, can we go from big picture to small picture? Maybe I'm overly obsessed. I lived in New York for 15 years, a long time ago.
Yeah.
You captured the subway experience, in my estimation, as precisely as anybody I've ever read. How big a part of your life as a kid was this subway?
Oh, it was. I mean, I grew up on 11th Street and 2nd Avenue, and I went to high school on 77th and Broadway, so I took the subway at least twice a day. And, it's just in my mind. I haven't taken it a lot recently, and it's a lot nicer now. When I was a kid, it wasn't so nice.
Did you ever go in the subway? And what Marjorie was going to describe to embarrass me is in hot summer days in New York City, when I was in law school, if you couldn't get a date, you went on the subway. And that was essentially where you had your sort of...
That's where you tried to meet people?
Exactly. Well, or more than meet people is usually what went on in the subway.
Really?
You never had that experience?
No.
He was pressing up against people on the subway. I
don't want to do a Me Too thing.
Which is really outrageous.
Pressing up against everybody.
Everybody was pressing up everybody else.
I see. Frottage, they call it.
Yeah. I guess I think that is...
But this is a great...
Of course, the French have a name for it.
What is that?
Frottage.
Frottage, that's right.
Yeah. You're a frotteur.
Do you mind if I read a sentence from your subway description?
Do I mind?
Yeah. This is great. Here in the simulated captivity of a subway car, it seemed like the male imperative to gaze unapologetically at the female was a creepy game of chicken. The man-spreading, lip-lipping, whatever, exhausting. And these are men who would never act this way up in the disinfecting light of the street, but down in the subway, these same males reverted to this kind of primal kind of thing. You captured it, which is really great. It reminds me a little bit, I'm going to really flatter you now, of the opening of Rabbit Run when John Updike talks about playing basketball.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the same kind of thing of capturing a certain kind of thing. You really captured the subways there.
Updike was into frottage, too.
He was into frottage. He was into frottage, yeah.
Seems like it.
Okay. So tell us a little bit more about the book, though. So elaborate a little bit before we move on to other things. Tell us more about it.
Well, I kind of used this wager that I spoke of, the one from the Yeats play, to kind of set up an idea of parallel lives depending on the woman's response to the wager. So she says yes, she says no, whatever. What happens after you wake up a different person from who you were before the wager? So there's like 3 different iterations of her life in the book. I also wanted to kind of emphasize the female point of view from the original, the mythological point of view, which is heavily on Cuchulainn, on the male. And this is really a story about a woman. In the beginning, when we meet her, she's kind of her boyfriend's assistant. She's his research assistant, but she has many ideas of her own. He's trying to write a book that's going to make him famous. And once she wakes up alone, the middle part of the book, which is the longest part, is really of a woman seizing control of her own narrative and not being an assistant or not being second to the man. So that's kind of the retelling in favor of the queen as opposed to the king.
We're talking to David Duchovny, who you know for a lot of reasons. Most recently, his brand new novel is Miss Subways, which is getting great reviews. Did I read, speaking of novels, that Bucky effing Dent, which I think your second, is about to be made into a movie?
Yeah, I hope so. I'm trying to cast it right now. I want to shoot in August in New York, and we'll have to shoot a couple days up here as well.
And what's the name? Is it Ted? Is that the name of the guy?
Yeah, Ted.
And didn't he have was his pet like a mechanical fish?
Mechanical fish, yes.
So what was the inspiration for
the mechanical fish?
I don't know if people, no. I don't know if you have a Boston connection. I don't know if people know that you have a Boston. What is that?
My father moved to Boston when I was in high school, and he worked at Brandeis. So he lived up here for over a decade, I think.
So do you feel a connection? And by the way, Maureen Dowd's piece on you, which was, I think, 300,000 words this past weekend, she didn't get into the... Are you a Red Sox guy, or what are you? What's
no,
your
I'm a
deal?
Yankee.
You are a Yankee guy.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay.
But Bucky effing Dent, I think, gives me some cred with the Sox fans.
It surely does.
So we're talking to David Duchovny. Everybody knows him from The X-Files, from Californication, from Sex and the City. Great role you had there a long time ago. From
we all know that 2014 was juicing. Anyway, go ahead.
I didn't know until I started reading about you in preparation for this that you, as I said before, you went to Princeton, you got a master's degree in English at Yale University.
Yeah.
So were you going to be a John Updike yourself? I mean, is that how you, did you ever think about this?
I was in a PhD program, so I was going to get the PhD, and then I imagine I was going to try and get tenure somewhere and teach, and then use the generous summer vacation time to write.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd be some kind of novel writing or poetry writing professor of English literature somewhere.
So the fact that you've gone into novels is really not that surprising.
No, I would have identified myself as a writer, those forms you fill out when you're in high school. What are you going to be, lawyer, doctor, whatever.
So what happened? How did you make the segue into acting?
It was really through writing. I was at graduate school. I was at Yale, and I just thought writing was so lonely. And I thought, well, I guess playwrights are a little less lonely. At least they get to go to the play, and they get to watch people. They get to hang out with people. So I said, maybe I'll write a play. And there's all these great classes in the Yale Drama School. They allowed me to kind of audit them. And then I met the classes at the Yale Drama School, and there are so many productions going on around there. They always need bodies to fill in the small roles. So they said, hey, why don't you play this dude in this little play? And that's how I kind of started. And I thought, as a playwright, I should probably learn something about acting. I should probably learn what it's like to speak somebody else's dialogue. And I approached it as an actor from the very beginning.
Was the Twin Peaks thing your first deal?
No.
Special Agent Denise Bryan.
No, but it was early.
Parts ever?
Yeah, it was early. And in fact, I have a story about that involves my father, because he underwent heart surgery right around that time. And he was up here. And it was airing right when my dad was recovering. He'd had the surgery. And he had the tubes down his throat. He was unconscious. And I went to see him. And there was a yellow pad, a legal pad by his bed, where he was writing, his wishes or whatever, to tell that, because he had the tube down his throat, he couldn't speak. And I saw that he had written, I'm thirsty, my feet are cold, my son plays a transvestite on television.
I'm sure you're sick of this, but this line...
Because he wanted them to turn the TV on. And I'm sure they were like, oh... Who has been giving him the morphine?
Yeah, exactly.
If I play the classic line from Twin Peaks, you're going to say, I'm so sick of hearing this, I can't stand this anymore.
Is it I still pull my pants?
Oh, yes, it is. Here is one of the great lines from the last decade. From Twin Peaks, Agent Denise Bryson, that is, of course, David Duchovny, speaks with the great Agent Dale Cooper. First, you'll hear Kyle MacLachlan, and then you'll hear David. Here it is.
Denise. Hi, Coop. Yeah. Denise, I would assume you're no longer interested in girls.
Coop, I may be wearing a dress, but I still pull my panties on one leg at a time, if you know what I mean.
Not really.
Not really. Not
Well,
really.
David's laughing at that too, so I feel a little better. Can we go back to your book for 1 second here? I want to read, since Marjorie read. Where is five?
Can I jump in? With
Yes, you
may.
may.
The last run of Twin Peaks, there was a great line in the scene that I did.
In the reincarnation recently?
Where David Lynch says to me in his character that, you know, he told the other guys at the Bureau to accept me. He said they those clown something or others better fix their hearts or die. You know,
Ooh, that's a good one.
it was a great line.
So going back to Miss Subways for a second, the latest novel by David Duchovny, whereas 5 years ago, Kahn's diligent, years-long work might have been seen as predicting and prefiguring a hybrid monstrosity like the current president, in the actual age of Trump, Kahn's warnings felt belated, coded, impotent. Marjorie, my coworker here, suffers from Trump derangement syndrome.
I do. I'm guilty as charged.
TDS?
Do you
Yeah.
suffer from it?
No, because there is no derangement. I see it very clearly.
And what do you see?
Oh, it's the worst thing that could happen.
How do you explain it?
Oh, I don't know if we need to explain it. We just need to get rid of it. You know, I think we can talk about the explanations or, you know, whatever. He's there. He's a cancer on the country. He has to be removed.
Did you ever see him or meet him being all
I
the
waved
time in
at
New
him
York?
once.
Yeah, you
Where was
waved at
this?
him?
I was backstage at, like, you know, one of those morning shows.
Oh, he was there.
Yeah.
There's another great line that you've probably been asked about a million times, but I thought it was a great line, too, about living in New York City, that so much of New York is involved in looking away. Tell people what you meant by that.
There's so much stimulus. There's so much sadness. There's so much poverty. There's so much pain. You know, to walk down the street, if you were to open yourself to it, in any city, I would say in any city, but New York especially, you have to look away or else you would explode, I think, in either empathy or lack of empathy, and blame yourself.
Well, you know, it's very interesting because you don't see quite as much, you don't get hit up for money quite as much in Boston as you do in New York, which I visit all the time because a couple of my kids are down there. So it's almost like you have to get hard bitten in New York City because you can't be handing out dollars all day long.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah. So is that a problem?
I mean, it's a social problem.
Yeah.
It's a life problem. It's life is hard. So you have to make a choice sometimes of your own survival of self over reaching out to help someone else.
We're talking to David Duchovny. David, can we talk X-Files for? You sick of talking about X-Files, or is that okay with you?
No,
I'm a fan. I worried for you, even though you may not have worried for yourself, that a la John Hamm and Mad Men, even though he's a great comic, I would argue beyond that, a la Gandolfini and Sopranos, that you were Mulder forever and could never be. And obviously you've proven that's not true.
Right.
Did that not worry you through all these? I know you left for a while.
It did for a while. I think it did towards the end of the first run. I was just itching to go out and prove myself in other things. So it was something that was brought up to me from time to time. But, you know, on the inside, I never really had that thought because I just didn't think it was true. I mean, I thought, well, maybe it'll happen, but that doesn't mean it was true. You know, I knew that I could do other things. I knew that I wanted to do other things. So, you know, I would just think, well, just wait. Let's just wait, and then we'll have that discussion.
You know, luckily for me, I was going to ask you, but thankfully, I was going to say, is there any Mulder in you? And then I watched an interview with you this morning in which you said, essentially, if I'm asked one more time that stupid question about whether or not there's any Mulder in me, so I'm not going to ask you.
No, it's not the
You didn't
Mulder
put it
in me.
quite that way, but you put it was fairly close.
I mean, obviously, you know, you look the way you look, so you're going to look. I look like Mulder. I look a lot like Mulder.
You do look a lot. It's
Yeah, we
stunning,
noticed that.
actually.
We're exactly
In a postmodern
the
kind of
same
way.
height.
I think,
I look like
Post-contemporary.
an old Mulder.
Moldy.
Yeah,
we
look a little
wouldn't.
moldy.
No, I'm only kidding. We don't want to say anything
Yeah.
like that. So, what do you make of
I'll
all
say
this
it.
happening with television? I mean, when the X-Files began, or even when Sex and the City was on, it was a whole different thing. We tuned in. There were certain stations you could watch HBO, but now it's like Netflix, Amazon, everything. Is this a good thing for the people that work in the industry?
Oh yeah, I think it's definitely it's the heyday of content. You know, there's so many vendors. There's so many ways to consume content, there's not enough content. Now, it's going to be hard to get a consensus. It's going to be hard to have a hit the way you used to have a hit because it's just too scattered. It's too attenuated.
Isn't it hard to make money?
It's oh sure it'll be harder to make money.
Yeah, because you're not.
Well, it won't be hard to make money. It'll be hard to make a lot of money. I mean, I think in the end, it's probably good that a lot of people will be making decent livings.
Yeah.
But it'll be hard to make that huge score. Harder.
When do I can't believe you haven't asked this. Every time we have a writer on who Marjorie admires, and I know from what she told me about your book this morning that she admires your writing, she always asks, as a writer herself, and somebody who wants to write a book but has written columns and things for the
I
Globe,
could never
formerly
write.
the
I
Herald.
could never write fiction.
When you do this, I mean,
you don't know that.
You have, by the way, I am probably, I hope you don't take this wrong, I actually own Hell or High Water. So to tell you, and I'm probably maybe the only person listening who actually owns it, do you think?
Why not? I think people have bought that out.
I love that CD. It was given to me. And I love the thing. I love that song. But Marjorie would ask, which I can't believe she hasn't, when do you do this? When do you do Miss Subways? When do you do Bucky effing Dent? When do you do this stuff? And how? How do you
Yeah, you do it in the morning. Do you do it at night? Do you carry
I do it in the morning.
First thing.
I'm not going to write anything after noon.
Yeah, it's really hard to write at night.
Yeah, I like to get up before anybody else is up, have a cup of coffee, and if I feel like I'm writing when everybody's still asleep, I feel like I'm getting away with something. Like I'm working when nobody else is working. I'm getting ahead.
Yeah.
And I just have I think I have good mental energy in the morning, way better than in the afternoon.
Yeah, I know. That's a problem.
And when I write, if I'm writing a novel, when I sit down to write it, I don't necessarily know everywhere I'm going to go in the novel. I don't have it completely plotted out. I like to know maybe 20, 30 pages ahead and maybe the end. But other than that, I like to get caught up in it.
So you don't do an outline?
I do a very vague outline, but it changes so drastically in the writing.
So do you have a rule? You have to write a certain number of words or work for a certain number of hours?
No, just when I just can't do it anymore. I'll just I want to sit there for some hours for sure. I won't just get up after 20 minutes if I'm not doing anything. But sometimes I'll just write fast and a lot, and it'll be tiring. It'll feel like I've been there for hours, and that'll be enough.
So you're very disciplined.
I'm sporadically disciplined.
Okay. We're talking to David Duchovny. The book is Miss Subways. I want to ask something else about the industry, too, that we're now in like the post Me Too, Weinstein, all the people that got in trouble in Hollywood. Is this going to make a change is this going to matter? Is this going to change the way business has been done for years and years and years in the movie, TV business, do you think?
I think ultimately it will, and it should. I think it's not just Hollywood. It's the way business is done everywhere. So, I think this has been a necessary correction, and we're still in the midst of it. We don't know where the pendulum is swinging. We don't know where the middle is. We have a vision of it, and it feels like a meritocracy where everybody gets paid the same for the same job that they do. So, hopefully, we can get there.
Quentin Tarantino, I thought, really tellingly said, and I'll paraphrase, but I think this is right, I knew enough to have done more right after the Weinstein thing broke.
Sure.
With somebody like you who's been in this industry, have you known enough to have done more?
Not in that case. I
don't mean Weinstein.
Yeah.
I mean in general, no?
I honestly don't think so. I don't want to say I'm a saint, but I can't think of an example offhand. I'll get back to you if I do.
Did you see Michelle Wolf the other night?
I did. I loved her.
What'd you think of her?
Fantastic.
You did think so?
Fantastic.
What do you think of people who are defending the people she criticized, particularly reporters?
I think they're weak, and I think that's why Trump wins, because the one thing he does have is stamina and no shame. And these people, first of all, it's First Amendment. Second of all, she's telling the truth. Third of all, she's funny.
She is funny.
Fourth of all, she wasn't making fun of the way the woman looks. She was making fun of her makeup. I can go on and on. It's horrifying to me when I think those are my brothers and sisters who are folding so quickly. Don't do it.
We're talking to David Duchovny. The book is Miss Subways. This is something else I learned about you. A friend of Gary Shandling. There's been a great documentary about his career. Speaking of great stuff on television, tell us a little bit about him and your friendship.
He was just a prince of man. Just my great friend. I miss him daily. He was extremely thoughtful and sensitive, and obviously funny. A comic genius, I would say. He had an angle on perception and on life that was unique, it tickled my funny bone completely. I mean, this guy made me laugh more than anyone I've ever known. As you can tell, sitting here, I'm not a very easy laugh. So it was. I miss him. I miss his sage advice.
So what's your favorite? What's your favorite stuff on TV now? What are some of your favorites?
Not really watch them that much. I did catch some of Atlanta recently. And
Yeah.
I thought it was great. I was having some dental work done, and now they let you watch TV now. Yeah, at least in the fancy New York dentist that I go to.
You don't go to Dr. Bornstein by chance for your physicals, do you? Because you look good.
Well, I would like to go to Dr. Bornstein, and I'll tell you why. I feel like I'm 6'4", and I've never gotten anybody to corroborate that. And I'm pretty damn sure that I am.
I think he's just the man for you, my friend.
Okay.
David Duchovny, it's great to meet you. We love your book.
Yeah,
Miss Subways.
congratulations.
Thanks so much for your time.
This is beautifully done, and we very much appreciate your coming in. And I'll get this straight in the way going out. We've been talking to actor, singer, writer, band member, all that kind of stuff. David Duchovny. His latest novel is Miss Subways. He's going to be at a book signing event this afternoon, 4 o'clock, at the Harvard Bookstore. If you want to get tickets, go to harvard.com. David, thank you very much for coming in. Congratulations
Thanks for
again.
being here.
My pleasure.
Coming
Thank
up,
you.
we're going to talk to Andy Anatko.